Hello and welcome to the Philippines. Today I'm going to tell you a little bit about taxis, and I've been in a lot of them. This is my ride from the international airport on Mactan Island in Cebu over to Cebu City, and they happens to be a white metered taxi. There are two types of taxis in the Philippines. You have your white taxis that go pretty much anywhere, and you have your yellow airport taxis, pretty much dedicated to the airport, and so they usually come back empty. The My experience is that from the airport to the north part of Cebu City is that it cost me 200 pesos in a white taxi, or $4. My experience with yellow taxis is that it cost me about 400 pesos, or about $8, about twice as much. Makes sense. They leave the airport, they're dedicated there, they come back empty so they can take care of more passengers in the airport. Therefore, they have to charge more. Whereas the white taxis can pick up fares anywhere. Um, Frankly, when I've been in the airport and airplanes for 20 to 30 hours, when I get there and I want to get to where I want to go, that extra $4 isn't going to stop me from jumping into a yellow airport taxi. There are other options as well. There's My Bus, which is I think costs you 25 pesos to take you over to SM Mall in Cebu City. Um, and I believe they're planning some other bus services in the airport too, but I don't know the details there yet. You want to make sure that the driver turns on the meter when you get into the car. If he doesn't, and you ask him to, and he doesn't, just get out of the car and go find another taxi. I would recommend. I have had the experience of getting off the ferry at Pier 1 in Cebu City, and there's many taxis there, and they will try to uh, suggest that you should pay a flat rate. In my case, they suggested 200 pesos. Well, I know that the fare is usually 100 or even less than that. So I insisted that no, if he didn't turn the meter on, I would go find somebody else. In fact, Grab cars have units there as well. There is a third option besides white taxis and yellow taxis, and that's car companies, private car companies, and they may have one car or they might have 40 cars in that company. And they're often tied in with hotels and that type of thing. I'll give you some rates for some of those a little bit later. Keep in mind that rates can change, but a hotel is going to make a little bit of money on that. You probably have some security there because the hotel knows the company, knows the people, and the drivers. And if they lose their reputation, they lose that business. Costs you a little bit more, but a lot of times you can get a larger vehicle. If you have a group of people, you can get a larger van. A lot of these taxis are, most of these taxis are quite small, and if you three people and the luggage would be pushing it. I have heard taxis ask for another 50 pesos on the ride up and above the meter if you have like four or five people, because you're almost sitting on his lap because they are rather small, most of them. I have experienced where we were taking a very short ride and we piled, I think, six people sitting on each other's sitting on each other's laps to go a relatively short place. So it's overloaded, obviously. And he said, double fare, no problem. It's still very cheap fare. We're moving rather than taking two or three taxis to go the same distance. It's not that big a deal. It's not that much money, and it's fair to the driver. You also have Grab Car and you have Grab Taxi, and I will explain some of the differences in them and show you some of the rate differences. And then you have Uber as well here. I have read that the taxi companies have come up with their own app as well called Easy Cab, I believe, so that you can call a cab to your location if they're available. I was looking for the app. I haven't found it. The app I found called Easy App was for many parts of the world, primarily in the Middle East, but also for parts of South America and Central America, I believe. So hopefully that's coming here as well, because it is nice to be able to call a cab, to have them there at the time that you want, if they're available. Several times in the last week or two when it's been raining and I've had to go places and do things, I've used Grab Car. Uh, but several times I've got the note that all of our drivers are busy. We don't have any cars available. And so I ended up waiting in line for an hour at the mall in the rain to get a taxi. I will show you a online calculator here in a little bit later that gives you estimated rates for taxis, for Grab Car, for Grab Taxi, for Uber as well. Very interesting. I have found many taxis are willing to take very long rides up to the north of Cebu, down to the south of Cebu, over to the west of Cebu to Mobile, and I asked a number of people for different quotes, and I will go over some of that as well. Because if you don't want to take a bus, a crowded bus, or what's called V-hire here, van hire, taxi is an option. It's going to cost you a lot more than a bus, obviously. An interesting experience yesterday. I was at Gaisano Island Mall on Mactan Island. And unfortunately, it was right about, I think it was about 4 p.m. So you got rush hour traffic to deal with. And traffic on Mactan getting to Cebu can be a bear, and it definitely was yesterday. And I think there was 4 people ahead of us in line waiting for taxis outside of the mall, and not many taxis. In fact, there were no taxis coming, it seemed. And so I got on my Grab Car app and thought, man, this will be easy. I'll just get a Grab Car. And they gave me the rate, which was quite high. Normally, my fee from my house over here to the island is about 200 pesos or $4. And I think they quoted me 380 pesos. And it said, because of high volume, the rate is higher. I said, fine, okay, bring me a car. And after a minute or so, they sent me the message, sorry, we don't have any cars available. High demand, they're all busy. And part of the problem is Grab cars, they know where you're at, and they know that the traffic is bad over here. So even if there was one close and didn't have a fare, very possibly they just aren't going to take the ride at that rate, because it's heavy traffic coming over and then heavy traffic going back again. So it's not really a moneymaker for them, even at the higher rate probably. Anyway, we waited there a while. A large car, kind of like an SUV, pulled up and let some people out. And he rolled his window down and he asked the people right ahead of me. There was like 3 people, and they had a couple different sets of chairs, and asked them if they wanted where they were going. And they were speaking Bisaya, so I didn't understand, but he quoted them. I heard him say 350 pesos. And they shook their head no. And then he looked at me and he said, where are you going? And I told him. And that time I was going to go to Ayala Mall, actually. But I ended up going home instead because the traffic was so bad. And 350, fine. Me and my friend got in, and the traffic was so bad, it took us an hour to get across the bridge. And the bridge is less than a kilometer from the mall, and then it's a couple kilometers over the bridge. So basically, it took us 1 hour to go 3 kilometers, and it took another hour for me to get probably 4 kilometers. So it took me a little over 2 hours, and I was happy to pay him the 350. It would have cost in a taxi, because of the slower traffic, the congestion, probably would have cost me as much or even more. Grab car was going to cost me a little bit more than that. I didn't know this guy, but talking to him was interesting. He had a private car, his own car. He is consigned basically to Mole Bowl, to resorts in Mole Bowl. If they have people who want to go from Molbol to Cebu City, he will drive down to Molbol and bring them back to Cebu City or wherever they want to go. If he doesn't have a job out of Molbol, he lives in Cebu City, Mandaue City area, and then he just does what he does today. He goes to places that he knows are probably short of taxis, and he starts asking people, because he has the larger vehicle, he usually asks them if they want to ride. He quotes them a flat rate. And a lot of people will tell you don't take a flat rate, and that's generally true. But if it's rush hour traffic, if you're a large group, and most of his groups are larger because he has the larger vehicle, you might want to consider that. There is some risk because you have no idea who this guy is. It turns out that, amazingly so, that the friend of mine is from Barilli, a place near Molbol, and I told the driver that because I always ask them, where are you from? And I question them, and it turns out that the driver knows a cousin of my friend very well. So they had a very good and long conversation over that hour, more than an hour, in Bisaya, so I didn't understand most of it. That's one of the things about the Philippines too, is that unless you learn the local language, when you're with two or three or a group of Filipinos, Cebuanos, they're more than likely going to be speaking in their native language, and you're going to feel left out a bit. So it's good over time to try to learn that language, to listen, to learn the words. It is a difficult process for many of us. He also quoted me a price of 2,500 pesos, or $50 to go about a 3-hour trip to Molbol, which is a big diving area over on the west side of the island. And that is a very fair price. And I've asked a lot of taxi drivers. I asked many taxi drivers give me a flat rate going different places, just part of my educational experience, and just in case I really want to take a taxi instead of a bus someday. Most taxi drivers have quoted me 3,500 pesos, or at the very least 3,000 pesos. And this guy was right up front and quoted me 2,500, and so that was a good deal. I've got his number, and if I need to go any place in town touring with friends, I will call him definitely. Just for your information, if it's not rush hour traffic, anywhere you want to go in the Cebu City, Mandaue City area, there have been very few times, and I've been here a little over 2 years now, where my fare has gotten to 200 pesos. All of my fares are between 100 and 200, or even under 100 pesos. 50 pesos to the US dollar, 100 pesos is $2. So very economical, but they can add up if you're taking taxis both ways, once or twice, many days. This building up here, I think that's Radisson Blu, right across the street from SM Cebu City Mall. Many of the hotels here are able to, they're tied in with these car companies, and they'll be able to get you a car and a driver for a short trip or a long trip. It might cost you a little bit more, or it might not cost you as much. In the case of me going to Molbol, was quoted 1,000 pesos less than what the taxi had quoted. But in his case, he has business down in that area, so he might not come back empty. He might come back with somebody else, whereas a taxi very likely would come back empty. So he's got to basically get paid both directions. Now I want to show you a site that gives additional information on taxis. Very interesting site. I showed, some of you saw my video about traveling the Philippines by bus. And anyway, let's go over there now and take a look at that. Silentgardens.com, silent-gardens.com. And they've got lots of different types of information on travel here in the Philippines, from air, sea, road, train, that type of thing. Anyway, Come across this over a year ago, and it is just they do an amazing job of keeping it up to date. They are on. I would try to contact them, and they have a note up saying we are on a world cruise, so we're unable to get back in touch with you. So anyway, I hope they stay safe on their cruise. Anyway, taxi drivers information, some of the stuff I went over. They have a Philippines tax fare calculator. That's amazing. And here, as I've stated before, there are alternatives to taxis: Uber, Grab, and Easy Taxi. Now, I haven't found the Easy Taxi app yet, so I don't know if they just haven't put it out yet or what it is. Anyway, let's go down here. And you have three different types of fares. You have fixed fares, where somebody says you show up, you talk to the taxi driver, you tell him where you're going, and he says 300 pesos. In most cases, you're going to want to insist that they use the meter. On a rare occasion, the flat rate may be less than the metered rate, but that would only be a case where they're extremely congested traffic and you're sitting in traffic for extremely long periods of time. Here's gives you a little bit about the tariffs for airport taxis and white taxis. You can see the airport taxi starts at 70 pesos for the first 500 meters. The white taxi at 40 pesos for the first 500 meters. Then, but like I said, if any place you want to go in Cebu City, Mandaue City area, 200, 300, 400 pesos, 400 pesos being $8 US. It's not very much for like I said, 350, $7 for a little over a 2-hour trip. It would cost me probably $100 or more in the USA. And we come down here and let's look at what they have calculated here. They have this started in Manila area, and many of you will come into the Manila area, so this will be very convenient for you to use this map here. And what it says is to take the the green marker, put it at your beginning spot, and take the other one, put it at your ending spot, and it rather quickly gives you the distance. It shows you the route that they recommend. Not that your taxi driver is going to use that. He may know better. He may know some shortcuts. I have found here in Cebu City they often take some back roads to get around the congested areas. Off-peak time, airport taxi, 203 pesos. A regular common taxi, I think that's a white taxi, 157. So not a big difference there. Peak time, rush hour traffic, or a lot of planes coming in. You have a little bit bigger difference there, and it gives you the turn by turn too. That doesn't mean that he's going to use that. They have other information down here about Uber and Grab. 14-kilometer taxi ride from the outskirts of Cebu City to Mactan Airport. And that's what I've told you. My normal taxi, my white taxi, cost me right at 200, and that was for about a 9-kilometer ride, about 5 miles. And they're saying 14 kilometers here, probably 9 miles, 10 miles, would be 195 to 351. Uber would be about 276. Uber is more expensive generally than Grab Taxi or Grab Car, and there's difference, 2 different apps for those. And I'm going to start using Grab Taxi as well instead of the Grab Cars, because too often they don't have a car available for me. And just for your information, my 100 peso ride with a white taxi, metered taxi, when I use Grab, usually will be 30, 40, 50 pesos more. And then if it's high demand, even more than that. Still, it's not a lot of money if it's convenient to me. And here's the thing, see you soon, they're on there. What a nice yacht. They didn't even ask me if I could come along. They're on their explorer trip. Anyway, let's go back up here to this map here. And I'm going to go down to Cebu just to see what it does here. Now, what I've done is taken my starting point, put my starting point down here in Cebu City, and I've left the end point up in Manila up there. And you can actually do that. And what will happen is the taxi will go up here to the north of Cebu Island, get on a ferry, take the ferry over here to Ormoc, I believe, and drive up here. And I think there's a bridge there between this is Leyte and Samar here, and get up here. And I don't know if there's a bridge there or not yet. They might get on a ferry, go across here to Luzon, and then drive on up here all the way up to Manila. And the distance 1,125 kilometers. Taxi fare, a little expensive, 15,000 pesos in an airport taxi. Only 13,000, what a deal. 13,000 in a white taxi. Unless you go during peak time, and then might as well ride in style, airport taxi, only 30,000 pesos to go from Cebu City to Manila. So I've started at Cebu City and going across here down to Car, I think is where they cut over, and go down to Molbol. And they give me the rates, and let's see what they come up with. About 100 kilometers. Airport taxi, 1,406 pesos. That sounds low to me, because I don't think you're going to get any of them to agree to do that on the meter. It just isn't going to happen. Once they get out of the city, they always go flat rate. And common taxi, 1,209. Now, I know there are probably laws that say taxis have to pick you up and take you anywhere that you want to go. But I will suggest that they will find a reason why they can't go. They will find whether my engine is breaking down, or I'm sick, or whatever. I just don't think they're going to do it on the meter. And I think that's fair enough in my opinion. Off-peak time. Peak time, that's more in line with what I was quoted. Common taxi, 2,176, whereas the guy quoted me 2,500, and most of them will quote me 3,500. In the 2.5 years, or a little over 2 years that I've been here, I've only had a couple instances where I've really questioned uh, the taxi driver. And the one guy got in, he had a meter inside of his car, because I asked. It was raining, it was rush hour traffic, I didn't have an umbrella, and I was trying to flag taxis down and not having any luck. This guy pulled up to the side of the street, and I looked in, and I said, "Are you a taxi?" He said, "Yeah." He pointed to his meter, but the meter was kind of over in the very left corner of the driver's seat, so it was difficult for me to see. And I was a little suspicious, but I got in and took the route. We were in rush hour traffic, so I don't think it was I think it was a phony meter. It worked, but I think my fare of about 250 pesos should have been closer to 180. Still, it wasn't that much. I got out of the rain. I got to where I wanted to go, and I may have been taken for a little bit, but like I said, I got to where I wanted to go. I got out of the rain. So those are your options. You get out into the provinces, the smaller cities, that will change a little bit what's available any given time. So you have the white taxis that are the lower price generally. You have the yellow airport taxis that are more expensive, but usually reasonable and convenient. You've got Grab Car. You've got Grab Taxi, which is a taxi that's signed on with Grab, basically. they're a taxi when they don't have grab rides, and they're a little less than grab car generally. You have Uber. There will be coming out an app that the taxi companies will be using called Easy Cab, I think. Other than the one, there is one in the Middle East and in South America, I think that's called Easy Car. Maybe that's the app that they're trying to sign in and implement here in the Philippines. And then you have the private car companies. It might be one person, or it might be a fleet of cars, 40 cars, and they often are tied in with the resorts and or hotels, and you can ask the people at your hotel desk or your resort what they have available for cars and the pricing and that type of thing. So anyway, just be aware of your surroundings, be careful, uh, try to get information on the cabs that you take. Take a picture of the license plate or the cab number or whatever in case you leave something in the cab or you have some issues. A lot of the malls and stuff will give you a slip, and the airport will give you a slip of paper with a cab number on it. If you have any complaints, you can complain to the proper authorities. So anyway, thank you for coming along. I hope that helped you a little bit, and safe travels to you all. Please like the video. Please share the video with your family and friends. Please subscribe, and we'll see you next time. One other thing before I go. It's not unusual at different busy intersections for kids to come up, usually kids, to come up and beg for money. And generally it's just not a good idea to do it. There are laws against it. A lot of these groups are part of a group that's brought in just to beg for money. Anyway, that's a topic for another time. Anyway, the way to let them know that you're not interested is to take your knuckles, tap on the window a couple of times. That is generally a sign that that no, you're not interested. Sometimes you have to do it a couple times. Take your knuckles, just tap on the window a couple times, and they sometimes will go away. Sometimes they will not.